The Flash movie recreates one of the greatest scenes ever seen in a superhero movie.
I've loved you since I met you. But I don't know what to think of all this. I really don't.
Look, sometimes I don't know what to think about this. It's just something I have to do.
Why?
Because nobody else can.
But let's ignore that for about 15 minutes, and instead let's talk about the rest of the movie. I decided that after the handful of video game videos I've made, that I should taint my consistency even further and discuss a movie that I frankly haven't even decided whether I like or not. There's a very interesting concept at play here, where we are taking a Flash that we've already been introduced to, that's had his powers for years and is frankly kind of unbeatable against just about any threat. In the Justice League film, we saw a Barry that was almost afraid of his powers, honestly kind of an agoraphobic, and while he was excited to feel like he belonged, he was too afraid to make much of a difference. The 2017 version of Barry Allen was basically just a kid pulled out of his depth and wasn't able to contribute much, though honestly, none of the Justice League did much outside of Superman. Moving forward to Zack Snyder's Justice League, we saw a much more assured Barry. He was still new and most of the fighting was left to the more experienced members, but Barry was always there, saving people and helping out where he could. He was everywhere at once until the end of the film, where he was integral to the defeat of Steppenwolf. That version of Barry was still afraid, but he was only really afraid of one thing: fucking up and letting down the people relying on him. Keep that in mind, that'll be important later. Both versions had some similar traits, boiling down to his social anxiety, covering his trauma with comedy, and coming across as a little annoying, but good at heart. So to go back to what I was saying, the Flash movie used both versions of this character in an interesting way. The Barry we see at the beginning of the film isn't afraid of himself, but he does still fear letting people down. We see how he's grown as a superhero, and that whole part of his life has become easy. There's nothing that worries him when he has the mask on. When we saw Barry in the other two films, he didn't have much in the way of life. All we got was a hint towards him trying to save his father in prison for the murder of his mother. In this film, we build on that. Barry's become a CSI, and his whole focus is on his goal of getting his dad out. But that focus is putting his job at risk. It's become an obsession, and while he's focused entirely on the past, the world is moving by too quickly for him. This Barry Allen can't seem to do anything right in his own life. The only thing he has is his dad, and when it looks like Barry might lose him forever, he lets go. He starts to run, remembering his mother, and pushes past his self-imposed limits, accessing the Speed Force for the first time. I know none of this is actually expressed in the film, but I'm not arguing it's a good scene. I'm just laying down the groundwork right now, okay? Barry shows in this film that he runs from his problems because if he can put everything behind him, then he'll be safe. The irony, of course, coming from him being too afraid to let go of that past at the same time. He's even warned by Bruce to move forward, but in talking with Iris, the love interest with like 5 minutes of screen time that I'm not gonna focus on here, he tries to come up with a loophole, not realizing the sheer amount of reality fuckery he's creating, despite being told how much fuckery there could be. Sidebar, but it really is a shame that the last time Barry sees Ben Affleck's Bruce, he asks to hang out and Bruce turns him down, clearly affected by their conversation. But regardless, that brings us to the end of Barry's real character arc, unfortunately, and leads us to the real interesting part. So far, we've seen a Barry that's still naive, but has grown over the years and knows what his powers are capable of. We never got an origin story for this version of the character, so instead, this film introduces a second Barry that can give us a facsimile of that story. A Barry that starts without powers and has to learn what having those powers means. To keep things simple, the Barry from the beginning of the movie will be Barry A, and the Barry introduced here will be Barry B, or to keep things even simpler, Benson. Say hello to Benson, everybody. Benson doesn't have the same drive as Barry does, and more importantly, since he didn't go through the same trauma, he doesn't have Barry's shyness, his social awkwardness, his fear. This is a Barry, or rather a Benson, that doesn't know where he's going, but he's comfortable with that. He doesn't run away from his problems because he isn't afraid of them. He's optimistic, and frankly, more annoying than our Barry ever could be. No diss to Ezra Miller, at least not for their acting, but I have no idea what they were thinking with this character. I couldn't stand Benson for most of the movie, even though he gets arguably my favorite scene, but we'll get there. Benson's origin is everything we could have expected of Barry's: the wonder, the excitement over having these abilities, and of course the staple of superhero movies, failing miserably for a third of the movie before becoming a master of his powers magically for the final act. There's really no redeeming moments for Benson in this entire act, the closest coming when we get a snippet of Barry's backstory. We see what Barry was doing during Zod's invasion, saving a child but being forced to watch the father die, echoing thematically what we see happen to Barry with his father, even down to the father telling his kid to run away, just like Barry's dad. This moment serves two purposes, both to highlight the horror of Zod's invasion and Barry's inability to stop it, but also to introduce a lesson that Benson will be forced to confront later. The idea that you can't save everyone. It's not directly addressed in the scene, but I feel like it's an easily missable lesson for us because it's a lesson that Benson himself doesn't realize through the entire movie. But Barry does, even if he should have already learned it by now. This being Benson's origin story, however, is unfortunately skipped over in favor of bringing in cooler characters and recreating moments from the Flashpoint comics in admittedly very cool ways. We not only get to see Barry and Benson meet an older, more successful Batman who's managed to actually bring peace to Gotham, and because of that he's seemingly lost his purpose, but we also get the chance to see the best character in the DCEU, Kara Zor-El. I actually want to make a video just about her, but this isn't that video. The problem this presents, though, is that at no point does Benson really have a presence in this film. Every chance we have to build his character, we instead spend introducing a new character or reminding us of nostalgic moments, or letting us see other characters that really deserve better than this movie. It feels like Benson's only character trait sometimes is stupid. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to contrast the more experienced, more broken Barry of the main timeline, except every time they address that, it just goes back to Benson acting stupidly, and he doesn't grow. If this is supposed to be the closest thing we'll ever get to a Flash origin story, then it's important to get to the core of what made the character who he is as a person, and that isn't the death of his mother. Sure, it's the catalyst that led him down the path to becoming the Flash, but the person he isn't made by his tragedies alone. Which brings us to the crux of this video. Barry and Benson have a lot of different experiences and therefore a lot of different character quirks, but it's undeniable that one of the threads this movie tries to follow is to make Benson more like Barry, to make him a hero. This movie describes this best in a scene between Barry, Benson, and Kara, defining what makes Barry a hero and the lesson that Benson needs to learn.
Came back.
I'm glad you're okay. I have to ask you something. When you found me in that hole that they put me in, and I wasn't Kal-El, why did you help me?
Because you needed help.
The basis of the Flash as a hero echoes a sentiment that I brought up at the beginning of the video, mirroring someone else who helped people.
Because nobody else can.
So, for this to be the ideal that Barry imparts to Benson to become a hero is poetic, an inspiration to leave with this world's Flash. Except this isn't a lesson for Benson. This is a lesson that is brought to Kara Zor-El, Supergirl.
Why did you help me?
Because you needed help.
Do you know what this symbol stands for?
Supergirl means hope, right?
Hope, yeah, does it mean hope?
Yes. I will help you fight Zod.
I swear this character ironically does the heavy lifting of the plot for this movie. After this character's introduced, the film acts for a good chunk of itself as though this has been her origin story rather than Benson's. Don't get me wrong, I stand by her being the best character in this film and possibly in the DCEU, but come on, this is the Flash's only movie. The idea of having two Barrys was a cool one, letting us simultaneously see the Barry from before amped up to a whole new level, and a Benson that just got his powers, learning to use them and to become a hero. We do see Benson speaking with Kara after she's freed from Siberia, and he's very upfront that people deserve to be saved, and it is Kara that says she has no interest in saving people. So it makes sense for Barry to have that conversation with Kara and not Benson, right? See, Benson goes through the beginning of this movie with no inklings of being a hero, only doing what Barry tells him to do because he thinks it's cool. When Barry tells him things about Zod killing thousands, he barely bats an eye. So when it comes to the scene later with Benson talking to Kara, it would naturally follow that all he cares about is if she's able to stop Zod, since that's what Barry wants. He showed no interest in if she was okay, frankly, didn't acknowledge her at all. It was Barry that said they should save her. Barry that explains Zod. Barry that led everything in this movie to this point, dragging Benson along for the ride. This would be the moment in the film to highlight that, to have Supergirl confront Benson about why he's doing any of this and point out that he doesn't know. He doesn't know what it means to help people. Then when Kara asks Barry why he helped her, his reply could be the catalyst for Benson's development towards the end of the movie. I also think that Benson learning about the death of their mother being what started all of this when he loses so much narrative potential, and what potential was left was utterly squandered, but that's not what this video is about. Okay, let me be honest, the point of this video has kind of changed as I've written the script. See, initially this was going to be a fun scene comparison between Batman 89 and The Flash 23, because I would go so far as to say the latter has a blatant reference to the former. The framing, the location, the way the scene plays out, and certainly the theming of the scene are also similar that a case can can certainly be made. But as I went, I wanted to provide some context, and this kind of became a breakdown of the two Barrys, and I decided I had a lot more to say about this film than I initially thought. I've actually decided I want to make 2 more videos in regards to this movie. This video will act as a setup, putting my thoughts out there and establishing a basis. But after this, I want to go in depth into Kara and what we could be losing if she isn't brought back. After this, I want to talk about Barry B. Benson and his utterly abysmal setup, wonderful payoff, and then non-existent conclusion. I have these videos lined up and I've already started work on them, as well as a 4th video, only tangentially related, that I don't want to go into too much yet. To wrap things up, this Flash movie was pulled in too many directions, to the point where writing this script, the runtime of the movie felt at least an hour longer in my head than it actually is. It's incredibly difficult to keep track of all the random bullshit that goes off here, and trying to break it down and make a genuine analysis is borderline impossible. Which is why I'm focusing on what I actually care about, and I'm just talking about the characters and what's on my mind about them. I hope you guys still enjoyed my ramblings in this video, and I hope you're looking forward to my other upcoming videos about the movie. If there's anything you'd like to say about the movie or this video, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I try my best to reply to any I see. That's all I've got to say at the moment. I've got to get to work on those other videos, and I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to it. Until then, remember to be gay, do crimes, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.